Feels like the Red Sox have been missing one major component through the first couple weeks of the 2023 season, and maybe, just maybe, they found it last night. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin. Before we get into today's video, I do want to remind you that tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we are hosting a live watch party of the Red Sox Twins game. This is open for everybody. These are a ton of fun if you have not been to one yet. We watch the games together. We talk Sox. We talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, all in one giant live stream. Again, that is going to be tonight on this channel, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Anyways, the Red Sox pitching staff so far this year has been, we'll say, less than ideal. They have the most runs allowed in the first inning of baseball games by far in all of Major League Baseball. They also have the second highest ERA in all of Major League Baseball, trailing just the Oakland Athletics. A major part of the Red Sox spike in starter ERAs has come from Chris Sale, who's had a lot of duds throughout his campaign so far this year in 2023. Well, that changed a little bit last night as he had one of the most dominant performances we've seen from Chris Sale in a long time. So what we're going to do in today's video is break down Chris Sale's latest start. What was the difference between this start and every other start he's had this year? What are some things that are key takeaways from this start? And we're going to talk about why this was so desperately needed for this Red Sox pitching staff. But before we get into that, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Let's start by breaking down Chris Sale's actual start itself before we get into why it was so important and how it can really help this Red Sox team. Chris Sale last night was vintage Chris Sale, the Hall of Fame tracking Chris Sale that we knew and loved in the early days with the Red Sox and with the White Sox as well. He ended up going 6 innings. He allowed just 3 hits and 1 earned run, but maybe more impressively than that is over those 6 innings, Chris Sale struck out 11 batters and only walked 2 guys. Now, obviously, 11 strikeouts in a start is the record so far for this Red Sox team in 2023, but maybe more importantly than that is this was the first start since August 13th of 2019 that Chris Sale had 11 or more strikeouts in a game. That was almost 3.5 years ago since we've seen a start like this from Chris Sale. What's maybe more impressive than just the straight strikeout total itself, it's how he was getting those strikeouts in last night's game, because for the most part this year, the biggest concern with Chris Sale is not his mechanics. It wasn't the fact that he's unhealthy, because he's healthy so far this year, knock on wood. And his velo looked pretty good as well. All of the problems for Chris Sale this season seem to be coming from his control, right? He was all over the place. He didn't really know where the pitches were going. And when he was getting pitches over the zone, a lot of them were mistake pitches that ended up sort of right down the middle that were getting punished a lot, specifically by righties. Now, to show you guys what I am talking about, here is a heat map of Chris Sale's slider, right? You can see that it's sort of all over the place in terms of where it ended up, but the hottest part on this map is directly down the middle. Another great example of this is on his sinker as well. Again, you can kind of see that it's all over the place, but again, that heat map where it's the hottest, where most of those pitches are going, is dead down Broadway. Now, this isn't so much a problem with his slider. Chris Sale has so much movement on his slider, and he's such a funky slot from his delivery that he can get away with sometimes leaving a slider right down the middle because of that movement. But for the sinker and the fastball specifically, this control has been absolutely demolished. So far this season, Chris Sale has an average on his fastball of 600. Hitters are hitting 600 off of Chris Sale's fastball so far this year, and on his sinker, they're hitting 438. That means for both of those pitches, when Chris Sale is putting them in the zone, hitters are getting on base more times than they are getting out on Chris Sale's velocity pitches, which is a huge problem. But what excites people the most from this start, from this latest Chris Sale start, is the fact that he was dotting those pitches. He was using the fastball and the sinker exactly like we are used to seeing from Chris Sale, right? He was going left to right with the sinker, going in and out, trying to get batters off balance. He was using that high outside fastball that we know and love that comes after a couple of inside sliders, and he was using the north to south method as well. He was all over the plate in a great way last night. So the improvement on his fastball and sinker in this start was absolutely massive. Of the 94 pitches that Chris Sale threw last night, 63 of them were for strikes. That is a percentile of a 67% strike rate, meaning that 67% of the time last night he threw a strike, which is 5% higher than the rest of his starts combined. He was only throwing strikes 62% of the time throughout his first 3 starts of the 2023 season, and a great example of what Chris Sale with no control looks like, for those of you who have not been watching, is the Detroit Tigers game, where he walked the first 2 batters of the game, then struck out the rest. That was sort of what we were seeing from Chris Sale for the most part in this 2023 campaign. Last night, that changed a lot. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're sitting there, you're going, Corbin, this is one start against a Minnesota Twins team who has the second lowest average in all of Major League Baseball. They've scored some of the fewest runs in all of Major League Baseball. It's one start. This seems like an overreaction, and maybe you're right? It is just one start, and it's hard to make conclusions over one start. But sometimes a start like this against a bad team, a dominant start against a team that you need to dominate, is exactly what a pitcher needs to get his head right. Because if he didn't have a good start last night, you would say, oh, this is just Chris Sale. He's on the back end of his career. He's kind of falling off. But the fact that he was able to dominate a team that he was able to dominate is a fantastic sign that things are starting to trend in the right direction for Chris Sale, because it's not just the fact that he was able to dominate this team, it was how he dominated it. But how does all of this affect the Red Sox as a whole, and why was it so desperately needed from this Red Sox team? Well, aside from just getting a good start from Chris Sale and being able to have a competitive game with Chris Sale on the mound, it meant more to this Red Sox team outside of that. Because going into the 2023 season, we knew that Chris Sale was going to have to pull his weight at the very least to be competitive in terms of a rotation. And the reason for that is because of all of the uncertainty in this rotation, right? James Paxton still isn't with this team. You've got Garrett Whitlock, who had a fantastic start the last time out, probably the best, if not now the second best start from a Red Sox starter in this 2023 season, but we don't know what he's going to look like over the course of a 162 game season. We've got Brayan Bello in this rotation, who looked fantastic at the end of the year, but again, this is going to be his first full year in the major leagues. We don't really know what to fully expect from Brayan Bello. You've got Corey Kluber, who's in this rotation, who was really solid for the Rays last year, but he's getting older. You don't really know exactly how he's going to fit in as the 5th man in this rotation. Right now, you've got Tanner Houck in this rotation, probably not for too much longer, but you do have Houck in this rotation. Again, another guy who's never started a full season for this Red Sox team, and you've got Pivetta, who's all over the place in terms of consistency. The Red Sox did not have any certainties in this Red Sox rotation, which is why, for the most part, people were like, okay, if we can get some certainty from Chris Sale that Chris Sale's going to be at the very least above average pitcher in Major League Baseball, you can use him to sort of anchor this rotation. Now, we did not see that for the first couple of games of the season, and we know exactly how much that cost this Red Sox team. Having Chris Sale pitching the way he pitched to start the year would be a huge problem if that continued over the course of 162. Now, again, one game, right? It's hard to draw conclusions over one game from Chris Sale, but the drastic difference we saw in this start compared to the start against the Tampa Bay Rays is massive. It's huge. It could be exactly what this Red Sox team needs to get this rotation back into form. Again, one of the worst ERAs in Major League Baseball from a starting pitcher, and the worst runs allowed in Major League Baseball for a starting pitching group in the first inning. If Chris Sale can bring those numbers down, he's going to help this team's ERA a ton, he's going to help this team's first inning problems a ton, and he's going to be able to anchor this rotation. Now, again, one game, I'm not drawing any conclusions, I'm just hopeful from what I saw from Chris Sale last night, but that's just my opinion. So let me know in the comment section down below, what did you think of Chris Sale's start last night? Do you think it's something that could become a trend because of the way he was working pitches, or do you think this is a fluke and he's going to go back to what he was over the course of the first 3 games of the year? Let me know all your thoughts on Chris Sale's start last night for the Red Sox in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button. Like I said, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Plus, you made it to the end here, you might as well hit that sub button. You also might as well hit that like button as well. Helps these videos out a ton and would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you again tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern on this channel and in the red seats.